Senate Bill 107, and I ask the firemen that are here to testify to come forward.
Members, we're on Senate Bill 107 by Gatti.
Sit right here, Audrey.
Let me see here.
You sit there, it's my seat.
All right.
Chairman Morrell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Gatti, I have thoroughly reviewed your bill, and obviously we'll wait for your closing, but I'd like to move favorable at the appropriate time.
Yep. All right, so point of order from the chair. We on 107 now. So on these, Senator Peacock.
Okay, I just have questions before if I know there was a motion, it was letting the author know, but I have questions because.
You have questions on the previous bill or on this bill?
No, 107. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll have, I don't mind taking questions on this at all.
Okay. All right. All right. So, point of order, the question was not called.
Thank you.
The question being called, that's any debate. So we proceed on that. Has not been done. So we'll proceed in normal procedure order. Senator Gatti.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is Senate Bill 107. Post-traumatic stress disorder is very prevalent in our law enforcement and our firemen. Post-traumatic stress disorder has been around for the ages. In World War II, when folks would suffer with, they didn't know what it was yet, but it was PTSD, they would pass out cartons of cigarettes and deal with it. In Vietnam and in later wars, drugs and alcohol were prevalent as a way of repressing the side effects of what they had seen. Now, in the military, firemen and policemen, you have to be in tip-top shape, and you cannot have any drugs or alcohol in your system. So that has created kind of a crisis situation with firemen and police who serve today. Car crashes, fires, they see some things that normal people never see in their whole life. Bodies that are mangled, children that have died, and it's terrible. When I began to look at PTSD and how many suicides it caused in the fire and police departments, there's a lot of statistics, there's a lot of numbers, but I want to let you know this about the firemen that serve you. They're more likely to die from suicide related to PTSD than to die on the job. That's how serious it is. And it's gone untreated. It's gone untreated for a long time because, as we all know, growing up, when you see something, your dad, your uncle tells you, just suck it up. Buttercup. That's it.
Cowboy up.
That's right. And now we know after the Gulf War, we know after roadside bombs, we know after young men seeing many deaths at one time, both chronically and acutely, they see their friends and loved ones pass away, that technology, modern medicine have kind of met. And what they show is they show that if you treat PTSD early, it's not permanent. Let me say that again. If you treat it early, it's not permanent.
Let me ask this, Senator, is it because it doesn't, if you get ahead of it, you don't mentally imprint? Is that the reason being?
I think you have those mental imprints, but you have the coping skills early on. Okay. And those coping skills that it can only be learned from counseling and sometimes medicine.
So the imprint doesn't leave, though.
Exactly.
Okay.
But when you deal with it early, when you get that help early, then it's not permanent. And what I mean by permanent is the ripple effects and the repercussions of untreated PTSD. You don't need to see a study. We all know people that have been through this. They've lost a loved one, that's acute PTSD, or they served in the military or in law enforcement or as a firefighter or even EMS, and they see it chronically over a long period of time. And then you have that psychological phenomenon that we call the straw that breaks the camel's back, you know. And so what we want to see happen with this bill, and I'll just give you one scenario. I know these guys, my friends, are going to speak more about it. But I learned of a situation over in Lincoln Parish where a young fireman had come up on the scene. There was a car full of kids behind the crash, and he kept him in the car, and he went to go check on the injured people, and some of the kids got out of the car and ran out in the street, and he watched a child die right in front of him. He went to go file his claim. His chief said, "We have to get you help, man. We have to get you help." Because now what they're saying is when because of some of the training these guys have been through and other chiefs, they tell them, you need to get help immediately. Okay, we're not going to let this fester. We're not going to let this tumor metastasize through your whole body. We're going to get you treatment now. When he went to go file his claim, that something was said from the workers' comp carrier that, hey, you signed up for this. This is not something.
You want to repeat that?
You signed up for
Literally,
this.
Senator, you want to repeat that, please?
Yeah.
I mean, could you rewind and go over that again?
Well,
what
I
you
mean,
just said?
he went to file his claim, and he was told, you signed up for this. This is something you should have foreseen. And I'll tell you, that's kind of suck it up buttercup. You know what I'm getting at? And when someone, especially a man or a woman who's been through this stuff, when they have the guts to take that first step and say, something's different, I need help. Hey, it comes in different freight. Is there something out there to help me, boss? I'm not sleeping good. I keep thinking about that issue that happened a year ago, a month ago, a day ago. And when they make that first step, that's where the roadblocks come in. Now, it should be different. Our fire and police should be trained that when one of their buddies goes through something, there's an immediate response. Let's get you help quickly, because if you get help early, it's not permanent. So so the issue behind the bill really is a framework, a flow chart, so that when we see it back at the station, or we see it at the troop, or we see it at the EMS place wherever they keep their stuff, the fire department, that the chief can say, hey, this is the flow chart to get help. Because it's cheaper to fix this for us too. It's cheaper if you fix it up front.
So when you mentioned on the cost, is there a note associated with it? I don't see a note.
I haven't seen any note, and I don't think anyone's been provided.
Okay.
For this, so. Because mental health is something that's already talked about in the workers' comp statute, but it's not implemented correctly. So this is really just implementation of something that's there. But I would like to defer to the men that drove 4 hours to talk and give them some of my time.
Gentlemen, whichever order you prefer, Dennis, file yourself for the record.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Committee. My name is Matt Kinney. I've been with the Bossier City Fire Department for 19 years. I'm also an assistant chaplain for the Professional Firefighters Association with Louisiana. I'm also a chaplain for 3 other departments. I'm trained in critical incident stress management, suicide awareness, and prevention. We, as a chaplain and as a fireman, I've gone to many traumatic events. As an average, firefighters and police officers will go to over 2,300 traumatic incidents throughout their career.
And a career being 30 years or what?
Could be, and the numbers are over 23. It's just given an average, but an average would be a 30-year career. They're going to respond to a traumatic event over 2,300 times, for them to see that. And those traumatic events will take a toll on the mental health. And what we've learned is early treatment. We've learned that it can give you problems at work, destructive patterns, problems at home, severe depression, and lastly, suicide. In the last several years, firefighters and police officers, our suicide rate is higher than our line of duty death. It's higher than heart attacks and cancer. We have learned that early treatment can not only help the first responder, but helps the department, the family. Early treatment can keep the first responder from missing little to no work. Not only is it a tool to prevent suicide, it gives the first responders tools to keep this from happening to them again, and tools to use for their fellow coworker to keep them from going into that state that they went into.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name's Archer Lowry. I've been a fireman in Bossier City and Benton for almost 17 years. I'm here to share my story with you. I had some injuries that were related with the job. I had to have neck surgery. Had to have multiple neck surgeries. To make a long story short, I ended up struggling really bad. Didn't understand where it was coming from. Finally made a decision to go get help. What I thought I was going to get help for is not what I ended up getting help for. So I misdiagnosed myself. It sneaks up on you so fast. You don't really.
I see that as a problem in itself, trying to diagnose yourself.
Absolutely.
That's back to what the senator said. I guess you're still, and I'm going to just use a phraseology, you're still trying to cowboy up, kind of.
Yes, sir.
I mean, so you're going to get a diagnosis. You're going to self-diagnose something at a lesser level, I would think. I mean, I know.
Absolutely.
That's even on a minor injury. You're going to say it's not happening to me.
That's exactly what I did.
Can't be knee surgery. It's got to be,
Yes, sir.
just bumped it. And just use that as a minor example. So is that kind of an accurate assumption?
That's exactly what happened to me.
Okay.
Misdiagnosed myself. Decided to go get help after I broke down. Didn't understand why I was feeling the way I was feeling. Didn't know if I was going to be labeled. There was no fine line for me to follow. Everything I found out the hard way. And the reason I'm here today is to help brother and sister firemen not have to go through the same path that I took. After getting help, once I was clinically diagnosed and given a direction to go and maybe even better understand what was going on within me, it was a lot easier for me to deal with it. So I actually did have treatment for 30 days. I was only away from the job for 30 days, and it changed my life completely. I don't even know if I'd still be a fireman right now today if I hadn't went and got the assistance that I needed.
Well, thank you for the courage to be here today.
Well, thank you very much. And like I said, the whole purpose of doing this is for people not to be ashamed to be labeled with PTSD. So right now, the way the general society views PTSD is the less than 1% of somebody that goes out and shoots up a church or does some extreme act, and everybody's not to that level. Especially when you find out this can be genetically given to you, passed down through your line. When I found that out, it was in my family, several generations. So not only does it allow me to help myself, it allows me to help my children.
Correct.
If it gets to that point.
Senator Peacock.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I thank you both for your service. I represent Bossier and for all of our first responders. I mean, when everybody's running the other direction, y'all are running towards the fire. Y'all are running to save lives, and that's all of our law enforcement. Our law enforcement, our state police, our sheriffs, our firefighters, and the respect that this state has for you. Thank you. I really do thank you for that. Looking at this bill, and this is more for Senator Gatti, and when I read the bill and you talk about early treatment, which by all means, and I believe that they should be getting that, but when I read the bill, it says all rights and benefits granted by state law for one suffering. What does that do to our retirement systems? As the chairman of the retirement committee, it's something I'm wondering. Does this need an actuarial note? This bill is this is a new benefit that's being out there, and I want to make sure that we're looking at this from the perspective of when you talk about early prevention, I'm right there with you. I get that, and for I don't a tragic accident or fire or an explosion, the trauma, seeing that that's the. But you talk about early prevention in your testimony, but when I read the bill and when I see it says once it's diagnosed, it says, the survivor shall be all rights and benefits as granted by state law to one suffering an occupational disease who is entitled to the services connected in line of duty, regardless of whether the employee is employed at the time of diagnosis. When I read that language and knowing the retirement issues of there, what you say when early on treatment versus when you say all rights, there's something that we really need to look at, because if this is a benefit that you're going to be doing to all of our retirement systems across all across the board. I really think your bill probably needs an actuarial note
And I'll address
to
that.
look at this, because these are benefits that affect our retirement systems. I mean, that's just
And so I'll let Chad speak to that. Chad, do you want to speak to that?
Sure.
All right.
Chad Major, representing professional firefighters. Let me go around to get to your question, Senator Peacock. What happens now, I've been on the job 31 years. When I first got on the job, it's like Senator Reiser said, you know, it was, or Senator Gatti said, it was suck it up, buttercup. You didn't want to show that weakness because then everybody messed with you. That was the culture then. The culture in both police, fire, all emergency personnel, that culture is finally changing to where people are, we're teaching our folks now, if you need help, you need to seek help. And in the larger departments, they'll have what's called CISM teams, or critical incident stress teams, that they will go and meet with the guys or the ladies at the station and say, we know you had a traumatic event, there were 4 children you found in that house that burned up in that house, whatever the case may be, and try to monitor that. And at a certain point in time, those people are trained to recognize, like Mr. Kinney said, at a point in time where those people need to be recommended to see someone other than, not just a peer counselor, but to go see a professional. There are different stressors within PTSD that are documented, that are recognized by psychiatrists or psychologists. Those people are trained to do such. A few departments today have what's called EAP, Employee Assistance Program. Most of those programs are very much less than adequate, very poor. What they will usually do, you call and answer some questions. They in turn will say, okay, we're going to approve for you to see a board-certified social worker for 3 visits. That's the remedy. That's the prescription, so to speak, for these folks that are having it. What this legislation seeks to do is for everyone. If you're having those problems, you can go get diagnosed, go see a professional, that mental health professional, get diagnosed, and that treatment be covered so that you can get better. I know in the fire service, our divorce rate's almost 80%. I know a lot of people, Mr. Lowry was talking about, trying to self-diagnose. Well, the worst part of that is most of our folks start to self-medicate, whether that be through alcohol, whatever the case may be, without even realizing all they're doing is numbing the thing that's there, and when that numbness wears off, it's still there. And I can tell you a lot of things during my career, but I'll bring this one to your attention. I was on the job about 5 years. We made a call, a lady in labor. It's in an apartment complex up here off of Florida Boulevard. I get up in there, and there's 4 children there. I guess the oldest one was about 6 years old. And I said, "Are these your children?" And the lady's laid on the couch. She goes, "Yes." I'm like, "Well, you're an old pro at this. We're going to be okay." She goes, "No, my water broke." She was in her 2nd trimester. So I said, "Well,"
and I understand. I'm trying to say what's in the language of this bill, and I want to support, and I want our sheriff's department, I want our police and fire departments to offer help and assistance. My issue is when I read the language of the bill, when it says all rights and benefits granted by state law, I think you need an actuarial note for this bill so we know exactly how it's going to affect your retirement systems of our sheriffs, of our firefighters, system. Because if we make a decision and we don't know the cost, and then the actuaries, it undermines the soundness of our systems without having the knowledge of what we're facing with this bill. And
are you concerned with the retiree making a claim?
Well, when the language says all rights and benefits in the bill, I want to get the early treatment there. I want to make sure that is there to help our firefighters, our sheriffs, our state police, all of our first responders when they're dealing with this. But as the chairman of the retirement committee, I also have to say, I need to know what we're dealing with a cost, because this is granting a new benefit, and it says all rights and benefits granted by state law to one suffering from this disease.
And I
And you see
believe
where I'm coming. So I
Yes, sir.
understand. And
I understand your
do,
concern.
Thank you. So
I
I'm
do.
trying to do, and I just have to be sitting on this committee. If this was coming up to the floor, I would have raised this same red flag to say, this bill has a little bit more in it than getting early treatment.
Right.
Senator Gatti, if you see what I'm trying to.
I think let me ask Chad this way: is if you see a retiree who finally says, "Hey, this is why I've been on alcohol for 30 years and I've been retired for a few years."
nothing's going to change for that person. He's already retired, and that's where I was trying to get to. And I know I'm taking the long route, and I said I would because I want everybody to understand this. I live the life, so I understand it. Those on the outside don't, and that's why I'm here trying to explain that. So I'll go back to that call, and then I'm going to tell you about another call to show you the two different things that'll happen. So we made a call, and I said, well, you're going to be okay. I said, EMS is en route. We'll get you loaded up and get you to the hospital and have your new baby. She goes, no, my water broke. This baby's coming now. So I said, okay. So we got a blanket and put over and stuff. And sure enough, the baby was coming, and the baby was stillborn. And that lady and those children were traumatized, okay, especially the children. They're just big eyed. They don't know what's going on. Like I said, the oldest one was like 6. So I didn't know what I was just trying to calm the storm, so to speak, at the time. So I cut the baby's umbilical cord. The only thing closest to me was basically grocery bags, something like you get at Walmart or whatever. So I doubled 2 of them up, and I put that child in them, and I walked out of that apartment complex. And that was 25 years ago. And I promise you to this day that there's not a time I don't go shopping, I don't think about that, amongst other things that I deal with. I'm not saying that I'm suffering from post-traumatic stress. Everybody processes things differently. So I'll take you around to the next story. It happened up in your part of the world. There's a firefighter in Bastrop. He was the driver on the truck. Been on the job 14, 15 years. They were en route to a call. The people didn't stop for a red light. He T-boned the car, and he killed 2 kids in the back seat. He hung it up. So we're not trying to get a handout. What I'm saying is basically the intent of the bill is to that help to be there. A lot of them won't do it because they can't afford the treatment. A lot of them turn away from it because they can't pay their copays. I mean, we got
the
firemen that
treatment
make
should-
minimum wage.
Absolutely, the
So-
treatment should
and I
be
agree.
there.
I
that's
believe
what
you
I'm
when
not-
you say you want to help, and I understand maybe there's a concern about the cost.
Well,
Look, when we get into this career, we don't get in it to get out quickly. We get in it because we love what we do,
I mean,
and
and-
you know that.
and-
And
As a first responder for all that, y'all go to where the average citizen doesn't go. I mean, when
yeah, we
there's-
probably
when
needed
there's
counseling
explosion,
before
when
we
that-
got on the job.
Right.
That's right.
So that's something, Senator Gatti, I want to just work with you through this.
I appreciate that.
And so we know what we're doing and reading the language of what's in the bill. And when I
And I
read
think
all
that- I
rights
think
and
the-
benefits, that's something we need to.
And I think the point of clarity is that if we're talking about active duty or retired, this is active duty.
Well, all rights, retirement is all. When you say all rights and benefits, that's retirement too. I mean, so that's.
I think it's including all rights and benefits under Title 23. I think Judge Keller's here to speak to that if you needed to speak to that.
So I think the point that he's making is actuary sound, that we can carry out these benefits and not run out of money at any future date. So, Senator Peacock, if you want to,
I've just wanted to raise that
And
issue.
you- and
This
that's-
is something I'm gonna.
it's very valid that we want to make sure we are actuary sound to continue these benefits for on out to others in the future generations. So your point as well. So maybe on the second or third reading, if what depends on what happens today.
Yeah, I'm going to move favorably on this bill, but I am going to request an actuarial note to be put on this bill, and it might have to be dual referred to a retirement committee to get all of our systems to come forward to look at this, because that's something when I'm reading that all right, and it might be that it's only for active duty and doesn't affect our retirement systems, which if that's the case, I think that's something
and that was the
we've got to do.
intent, because I believe once you become retired, you have a different set of benefits. Is that correct?
Well, disability is part of the that's into the retirement, so.
Yeah,
you can convert a retirement to a disability retirement subsequent to retirement, but that basically affects Uncle Sam, so to speak, and not the system itself. Yeah, and I think if you would look at the laws that are in place now between the heart and lung and presumptive cancer law, those don't have that effect unless that person becomes disabled. And the same fact would hold true that it would be considered line of duty, which happens now, not often,
No, I mean-
and there is a small
So
effect.
that's where I'm coming
Yes,
from.
sir, I understand.
So, thank you.
And I
Thank you,
appreciate
Mr.
you.
Chairman.
I don't like sitting at the bench with the judge, so I'm gonna go ahead and move out the way.
Good morning, members of the committee. The answer to Senator Peacock's question is that this bill not only makes PTSD a compensable injury for the protected class of employees that are listed therein, but my name is Cheryl Keller, and I'm the Assistant Secretary of the Office of Workers' Compensation. So this bill makes PTSD a compensable injury for the protected classes of employees that are named in the bill. But more importantly than that, it gives the employees a presumption that if the PTSD was contracted during their employment or after their employment, it's presumed to have been caused by their employment. What we have now in workers' compensation is that you can claim PTSD as a compensable injury, but you have to prove it by a preponderance of the evidence. This bill makes it a rebuttable presumption that it was caused by the employment. So there is no additional burden on any system as a result of PTSD being a compensable injury. It already is. It's just more difficult to prove without the rebuttable presumption that is in this bill.
Senator Pete.
About workers' comp, when I read the thing, it says all rights. I'm concerned that we need to know, have an informed thing from this legislature of what if this affects the retirement systems and the disabilities that come with retirement. And that's all I want to know, make an informed decision. And I think that we should do that as a legislature before we ever pass anything. And, you know, you're saying it's only workers' comp. These are retirement systems for firefighters, for sheriffs, for state
Senator,
police.
that's not what I'm saying at all. What I'm saying is that this bill gives a rebuttable presumption that the PTSD is caused by employment. You can still get comp benefits for PTSD, so there shouldn't be any additional burden on any system as a result of being allowed to do so.
I'm gonna let our retirement lawyers look in that, and not the workers' comp lawyers. So
Okay.
thank you.
Sure. There's a couple of other comments that I'd like to make about this bill, just information only, gentlemen. The national trend in workers' compensation is that states are making PTSD for first responders a rebuttable presumption. And this all arises from the Pulse nightclub incident that happened in Orlando, Florida in 2016, when 49 individuals were mass murdered at that nightclub. One of the persons who went in to tally the body count after that Pulse nightclub incident was a police officer named Gary Reeland. He spent approximately 4 hours tallying up the number of bodies that were killed in that incident and covering those bodies. And afterwards, he was not able to return to work. Now, in Florida, there is no claim for PTSD. So he was not able to return to work. He did not receive any benefits whatsoever because of the way the Florida law was structured at that time. Since that incident, 6 states have actually passed laws which include PTSD presumption for first responders, including Florida. Those are Washington State, Florida, Vermont, Hawaii, New Jersey, and New Hampshire. In 2017, Colorado passed a bill recognizing PTSD as a compensable claim under workers' compensation. New York included PTSD as a claim for first responders, and as recently as April 15, a bill that would cover PTSD for first responders was advanced in California. However, we don't know yet whether or not that bill is going to become law. So one of the things about this particular bill is not only does it make PTSD a compensable claim, but what it says is that the symptoms of PTSD are inherent in the work that these first responders do, and that when you're considering the compensability of their illness, you should take into consideration the work that they do for us. And so this bill, like those in many other states, would provide that first responders needing compensation be presumed to be victims of PTSD for purposes of the Louisiana Workers' Compensation Act. The Workers' Compensation Advisory Council did meet yesterday, but we take no position on this bill or any others.
Thank you for your testimony. Senator, I have read the cards of support in now. The cards of support in, those are in support of Senate Bill 107 but do not wish to speak. Peter Robinson Brown, Power Coalition for Equity and Justice. David Young, Louisiana State Troopers Association. Ed R. Parker. Darrell Basco, Louisiana Fraternal Order of Police. Cynthia Posey, Louisiana Federation of Teachers. Mr. Lewis Wren, President, Louisiana AFL-CIO. Shane Spillman, Professional Firefighters. Michael Pastoroni, PFA, BFFA. Adam Kimball, Professional Firefighters. Matthew Kinney, PFFA. Chad Major, PFFA of Louisiana. Corey Sharp, Firefighters. Charles DeRowley, Insured Workers. Matt Lartenberg, Bossier City Firefighters. In support would like to speak, Audrey Lowry. Mr. Lowry, you've already spoken.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Now we will read the cards of opposition. If you all will yield the table to those, and then we'll let you close, Senator. In opposition, Karen White, Louisiana Municipal Association, does not wish to speak. Jim Patterson with Law B, does not wish to speak. Wayne Fontani, in opposition, would like to speak.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to address you today. I'm Wayne Fontana. I'm representing Louisiana Association of Business and Industry, Lobby, on this bill. First thing, let me register my individual and also Lobby's utmost respect for law enforcement and firefighters. I've got law enforcement people in my family. We absolutely respect their courage and the things that they do for us each and every day. Also, let me also mention that PTSD is a very real problem, and it's something that we think needs to be taken care of, and it needs to be taken care of early on. I am here to tell you in opposition to this bill that we don't believe it's necessary because it is already covered under the Louisiana Workers' Compensation Act. It's covered in two ways. It is covered if you have an accident and you have what we call under the workers' compensation system a mental injury. You don't even have to be physically injured whatsoever, but if the trauma that you experience psychologically ends up disabling you, then you are covered under the Workers' Compensation Act. It's also covered under occupational disease under the Workers' Compensation Act. Even if you are in one of these professions where the risk is such that it is characteristic of or peculiar to your occupation and you develop PTSD, then you're covered under the Workers' Compensation Act today. Unlike Florida, who didn't cover these people at all, we cover these people today. The difference and the reason that we oppose this is because of the creation of the presumption. The presumption is the problem that we feel that's in the bill, and what it does is it changes and it makes the playing field unlevel because it treats these people that this bill is directed to in a different fashion than it treats every other worker in Louisiana. preponderance of the evidence, if it can be proven, and that's just a little bit more than 50%, if it can be proven that you're suffering from PTSD, then you're covered. We think that's the proper standard, and we don't think that this bill is the solution. I think there's a lot of solutions out there. Availability to quick care. There's a lot of different things that can be done and should be done, but we don't think this is the remedy, and we think that this is one of those bills that has unintended consequences. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for testimony. Senator, you have the right to close on your bill. Members, we are closing on Senate Bill 107 by Gatti.
We have
We
one
have an
amendment.
amendment. Okay, let's have an amendment, I think.
It's a technical amendment.
We'll hand the amendment out and distribute it now.
And while that's being passed out, I want to continue to work with Senator Peacock, Chairman of Retirement, to make sure there aren't any unintended retirement consequences.
We have the amendment being identified as 1050, being offered up by Senator Carter. Any objection to the amendment? Hearing no objection, amendment's adopted.
Thank you. I just want to respond to two things, and then one.
It's technical.
I'll take any questions if there are any. But I had the unfortunate opportunity to serve as a workers' comp judge for 2 years. And no offense, Chief Judge Keller, but I represented 7 parishes, and we had hundreds and hundreds of cases go through there. We had a huge backlog, and this is a real deal. When a fireman has to prove that this was caused by their job, all they bring to the table is that they're more likely to die from suicide than on the job, and they bring all the articles that are available to us. And when something in the law becomes presumptive, it's our goal or our job as legislators to make it a presumption in the law, so that we can save time in the judicial process. Earlier, the representative from Louisiana Association of Business and Industry said that we're treating these people differently. And well, that's what a presumption is. I'm not trying to pull the wool over your eyes. These guys, these women should be treated differently because all the numbers, all the stats show that they're more likely to have PTSD than someone working in the oil field or a teacher at school. The numbers are undeniable. Every state's looking at PTSD for our firemen and policemen because we don't want them to go down that dark road of suicide. And so I appreciate your time you've spent on this bill. And before I close, I want to let you know this. Autry Lowry, he just didn't recover from this. He went on to coach the Benton archery team, volunteer for free. And they've won international archery contests, and they've also won state last weekend. So we're very proud of what he's done in our community, not just as a firefighter, but also in teaching these young kids. And if you got a minute to go on YouTube, there's a little girl he taught who has cerebral palsy. And when for Autry, nobody could have taught her. And he built a stand for her. And she gets up out of her wheelchair and she makes her shot. And it's gotten worldwide attention what this man has done for this one child. If it hadn't have been for that treatment, we don't know if he'd still be in the fire department. So thank you for your time with this bill, and I don't know if we need to take any action on the amendment, but I appreciate you doing that.
The amendment's already been adopted.
Thank you.
All right, the gentleman has closed. What's the pleasure of the committee? We have a motion by Chairman Morrell to move report 107 with amendments. Any objection?
Co-authors.
Hearing no objection, Senate Bill 107 will be reported with amendments.
Thank you.
Thank you.